just, I think it always happens with all the devs that we work with, but both myself and Jonas come from development. So it's very easy for us to kind of connect. And, because we have there's a shared passion if you're crazy enough to get into game development. The beautiful thing about games is it's the experience and why we play it versus watching a movie. Why we take our personal time, put it into that versus these, especially with streaming now, so many options, right? And I think that's really an important part of that.
Kingdom Games has been consistently delivering more
DLCs that are like games on themselves, but they have a lot of things in common. They don't change the absolute concept of the Kingdom franchise. And these games are very popular between the players who play them. Should we expect more of this approach for this franchise forward, or we will see a game that will change drastically some parts of what makes Kingdom Kingdom?
No, I think there's always needs to be a strong sense of familiarity. If we ever changed kind of a core experience, and I think maybe the most poignant one would be, you go from 2D to 3D, right? And I don't see us doing that because any time in the future, then it's a different game. Then what we're doing is we'd just be trying to kind of take the IP, and if the IP was big enough, right, and then maybe you can transition it. I would say that Nintendo with Super Mario is a really good example, right? How they were able to kind of expand what Super Mario was, and Super Mario, was able to kind of transcend the genre type to, this, kind of this IP, this kind of franchise. Exactly. And I don't think we're there yet. As much as I love it and as biased as I could possibly be, I can't be that biased and say that we are in a place where we could kind of transcend that. So there will be that key thing, and something that really is that makes Kingdom unique, because we are in kind of historic settings as the foundation for the location, but the greed are the kind of the unique factor. So they always have to exist in that, and they always have to be the perceived antagonist. Are they an antagonist? We want the players to kind of decide who they think is the true protagonist and antagonist.
I think it makes any story game more powerful because it gives the player a unique choice to look at the game in a different way that a movie or a book describes something and then gives that to the audience. Games are like, we experience them, we complete them as the players, and therefore we can have our different looks upon the characters and what is going on.
Exactly, and I think that touches on kind of when we say big leaps of Kingdom, but would we go photorealistic, right? As an extreme example, and the answer would be no. Do we want to improve the definition of pixel art? What is modern pixel art? There's so many rendering techniques that can be applied, and still using that as the medium of how you want to present the world. So it's not an aesthetic that we're forced into, but it's a choice on how we want to reflect the world, tying into what you were talking about is like letting the player experience, right? Letting them kind of place their kind of twist or version of the story and kind of making that their own. And pixel art has this interesting ability where it's detailed enough where you know what it is, but there's a lack of that granular detail that maybe they can fill in. What does the griffin look like if it was in real life, right? The most kind of easiest way to see that is in the fan art, especially in the Steam the game hub for 2 crowns. The fan art is an expression of that. And I think if it was photorealistic, people feel that they need to adhere to that, and they have to kind of get those details that have been put there accurate. Otherwise, it doesn't look like that.
Limiting to their unlimited imagination.
Exactly. It's like there's some amazing fan art of the griffin specifically that I just love. And I also have a very close affection with the Griffin because I haven't told people this before, so this will be the first time I've said it's like in an interview. But I actually did the voice, or I did the sound for the Griffin when it's on the ground wounded.
Okay.
It's like, and it's like, and send that to our
and
sound design.
Touch. Huh? Hitchcock touch, like he was in some of the moments in the film.
And because Thomas, who created the original core loop, and I worked with him from the first Kingdom game that we published on the design side, and it's like we debated whether the Griffin should go into that, and he had taken a step back and handed me the reins, so to speak, and he was like, "It's gonna fly, it's gonna break everything," and it's like, "It doesn't have to fly," and he was like, "But it has wings, everybody's gonna want to fly." I was like, "It'll fall out of the sky, and then so everybody thinks it's wounded, and then they heal it with the gem, and then it's like, then they've kind of helped it be less wounded, but they'll understand that that's why it can't fly." And it really worked. And I was putting myself on a limb a bit because I was like, is that enough to sell that concept? But that's the fun thing, and it again ties into the first thing that you brought up, which is a beautiful thing about games. It's the experience that, and why we play it versus watching a movie. Why we take our personal time and put it into that versus these, especially with streaming now, so many options, right? And I think that's really an important part of that.
Some of these questions come straightly from my friend Arais, who is a big fan of you and considers Two Crowns as one of the best games of all time. And
okay, yeah, that's very humbling because I think as a creator you see all the flaws, and it's so awesome, and I appreciate it so much when someone who just really enjoys the game helps me step out of that moment and see like, hey, myself, the team, and everybody who's contributed have done an amazing job and created something that really feels special to people.
And he was curious about the new aspect, or I should say the bigger aspect of Raw Fury, which is supporting many developers to introduce their games to a big audience as much as indie games can be big. And he was talking about some of your games like Post Trauma and The Last Night, Routine, and he was asking which one of them is most exciting to you?
Whoa, out of all the games. But they're all exciting in their own way, and sometimes, some of them I'm fortunate enough to be more closely connected with, and some of them I'm, not as connected with, because we are a big company, and well, I wouldn't say big company, but we have grown. Because in the beginning it was just myself and Jonas, and then it was myself, Jonas, and David, and for a while it was just the three of us. And so it's crazy to me it's a big company because there's 60, 70 people within the organization, which I never fathomed that many people would kind of grow out of that effort we put in the beginning. So. Am I trying to do a politician move and dodge your question so that I don't get myself in trouble? But I would say Blueprints is one, and I'll say the only reason I would pick that is because of the closeness I have to that project. I happened to have to go to the US to help out my sister. And my kids had to come with me, so we got to see family because I live in Sweden, but I'm originally from California. The dev had pitched us, we almost missed it, and it's an amazing game. This roguelike with a deck builder element, with a puzzle element, a placement of rooms, and this, you're building with blueprints, right? You're building out everything for this to try to reach, the last room. It's poetry. And all of our games have that element to it, and that's one of the things we try to make sure we can find in any game that we collaborate with the devs on. That dev is based in LA, and I was in San Francisco. And one of our key DevRel guys who co-founded Raw Fury with us, David Martinez, he's also in San Francisco, and the guy didn't want to fly to Sweden. I was like, you know what? I have to do this emergency. It was like 3 days and I had to fly out. And he was like, yeah, well, I can come up and meet. And I was like, well, I'm going to be there, so I'll come and meet you guys, and we can all sit down and talk about the game. And there's just, I think it always happens with all the devs that we work with, but both myself and Jonas come from development. So it's very easy for us to kind of connect. And, because we have there's a shared passion if you're crazy enough to get into game development.
Yeah, you can look at those problems, those challenges in their way, because you have been on those seats, you have done those things.
Exactly. And just talking to him in the story, he's a successful director and commercial director, and he, packed up everything, was working at Blockbuster, moved to LA to try and become a big Hollywood director, and he's applied this craft, this story building, this world building that he learned in the movie industry, and has applied this to this game, and did it in a way that I think very few people could pull off. And his name's Tonda, and he is incredible. Like, this is an example of the future of game development, and where we're going to find those crafted experiences that you can't find in any other entertainment. And it's harder to find in the big blockbusters. You have these grand experiences, and we need those, and I would never want AAA to disappear. I want that to be successful, but at the same time, I'm happy that we can have these smaller projects and these independently kind of built up teams and games and small teams that can achieve great things that wasn't possible before. And so I think there's this perfect scenario that's kind of cultivating out of this, this kind of initial surge of indie, but now it's maturing and growing into something very special that is, I think, becoming absolutely equally important as AAA. And I do think what we need to do is find a way as an industry to support AA. And that's going to be the next challenge, to kind of have a perfect yin and yang scenario and this harmony within our industry where there's a great amount of content that can resonate with everyone.
So for the last question, I'm going to use what you said, because it was in my mind, but seeing your absolute passion about a project like this, it really shows what sets Raw Fury and some companies like you that actually cares about indie games, apart from what this industry looks like mostly. And at the same time, no one can deny the importance of AAA games, their existence in the field of getting millions of gamers into gaming. For me, like The Last of Us Part 2 and Celeste Sports are 10 out of 10. They can exist both at the same generation. But one of the questions is, this industry dictates to a lot of people to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And Raw Fury, as you said, first 2 people and now 70 people. What stops this from becoming another, AAA publisher? What stops you from thinking about, okay, now it's time for taking some $1 million, putting in on that project and becoming a developer of a bigger scale? Or no, this is my approach, I'm going to stay in this field, and we know that our success comes from being loyal to indie and AA, as you said.
Wow, that is an amazing question. First, I just want to compliment you, because you have some really, really, really thoughtful and great questions. That it is hard. You are spot on about that challenge, right? That it's kind of like equates to the selling your soul kind of scenario. It's like, and I feel like it's just being diligent and pushing against letting yourself kind of go down that hole. Luckily, that's a lot of money to fall into that, so we haven't faced that specific challenge, but we have tried to dive into games that were a little more expensive and found it that maybe we're not 100% ready yet. And and trying to always learn from those things. And we've succeeded and failed quite a few times, right? And we've failed, and we always try to walk away with that. And we try to walk away with that with, an equal and fair way with whoever it was that went on that journey with us. And I think it's, all of the first three, we're still part of the company. And I think I would like to be able to transfer that to someone else, because, can't do the same thing forever. And I think there's a lot of people that could do that, but it's like just taking that effort and making sure that you stay true to your values and your principles, and making sure that those also, though, can adjust and be malleable to the changes that are happening in industry. Money was very accessible before. A way it's been described as money was cheap, and which is kind of an ironic thing to say, right? But it was. Interest was really low. People had a lot more money, and they would put it into things and feel less worried about the risk factor of that investment. But now, with interest rates went up, we saw this inflation, we saw these things that scare that market, the financial market, and where it comes in, this money is more expensive now, because when are we going to see a return on this investment? The days of being kind of increased value on the growth that you talked about, right? That is less exciting to them now. What is exciting is like, when can Raw Fury be profitable? And luckily, that also helps us dial back. Luckily, we didn't kind of surge when people started surging during the pandemic, and things were happening. So I wouldn't say it was because we were just wise and ahead of the curve and saw it coming. Some of it, I think it's about a bit of just luck and just us sticking to those principles. So it made it to where we could weather that storm. And now that we've seen the value of doing that, I think we can do maybe if some other event happens that changes things, I hope that we can take that kind of lucky lesson and apply that, so that we just don't follow those trends that can trap you and later on, right? Painting yourself into a corner, that expression.
Yeah, what you say makes me remember what Arrowhead CEO at the time said after the huge success of Helldivers 2. He said, the worst thing I can do right now is overhiring, because that will change everything about our company, and it will stop us from making this game that you loved. And then, as you said, exactly like putting the torch onto someone else's hand, he said that, okay, I want to direct games, so I'm going to hire a CEO. And
yeah, I actually know both of them. I know the CEO they hired, Shams Georgiani, is an amazing guy. I absolutely adore him. I worked with him at Paradox, and they published Magica, which is and he signed it, and he knew Johan from university. I believe the backstory is, I'm pretty positive that he knew them from school in some way, shape, or form. And so I've had the pleasure of knowing those two for a decade now. And Johan he's brilliant, and he's wise beyond his age, and I'm a little bit jealous, but don't tell him that. But I'm so happy for his success, because they worked hard. They coming out with their first game and having a success like that, you can rest on your laurels and you can kind of start to think more of yourself. But I never saw that from that team and that group, and he's done a great job helping steer that. And bringing on Shams was a brilliant move, because they know each other well and they've worked together for a long time. There's an integrated trust, and I think having him do that, he almost was able to guarantee not losing that culture. And I know that they're going to be successful. And I I just cherish every moment we get to bump into each other.
All the best to you, him, and all of the developers who are passionate about their games. Thank you for doing what you do, and keep support indie games and all A games.
Thank you so much for your support and help.